Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Arthur, for introduction. I'm very happy that you're having me here, and I welcome also everyone who attend this session. As was said, my name is Štěpán Rešo. I'm from the Czech Republic, so actually quite close to you. But Entschuldigung, aber ich spreche nicht Deutsch, and I will not even try that. If you would like to ask about anything, please ask me, but please inside the English. I have here the slide if you would like to stay in a contact with me. I'm, as was said, the Microsoft Most Valuable Professional on a data platform, especially on the Power BI, and I'm co-owner of a company called Data Brothers. And I have one blog that is currently in English, which is called Data Meerkat. Unfortunately, all other blogs and podcasts are in Czech, so I'm sorry for that. In that case, it would be ununderstandable for 99% of the globe. But we are here today for talking about the SVGs. And because of that, I've created for you a very short agenda. I will not be bothering you with lots of slides. So only a few slides, and then we will directly go into the Power BI and we'll start creating things. And I will have for you some tips and tricks that can actually help you. Everything will go as it should. Yeah. Okay, we will start with what actually is an SVG. SVG is just a shortcut for scalable vector graphic. Under the SVG, you can imagine very simple XML file where you can define mostly anything that you would like to present inside your graphics. These files are incredibly popular around the internal graphics or the web graphics because it helps us actually scale everything up and down, and even without losing our visual quality. This can be pretty handy if you are doing some kind of graphics. But how this can actually help us inside the Power BI? We can imagine that every graphic, mostly anything, even any image, can be used to create some kind of charts. And if you look on a normal chart inside a Power BI, it's also the scalable. So we can just grab it, squeeze it, or make it bigger, and every time it will recalculate. Unfortunately, in case normal charts inside a Power BI, we are restricted to already prepared capabilities that these charts have, which sometimes can be very low. And quite often when we are focusing on a data storytelling, we would like to use another data storytelling methods or principles to actually not just use the colors, but also the sizes. So if I would like to grab your attention for something in, let's say, a bar chart, why not to make the one bar a little bit wider than any other? It can really help to bring the attention to highlighted part of a chart, isn't it? Yeah, it would. But in normal charts in Power BI, we're not capable to do that. If we would be creating this chart from a complete scratch, like in something like SVG or in a DNEP, it's just up to us what we will do with the result. And SVGs was starting to get much more and more support inside the Power BI. Why? Because previously we have just two specific visuals where SVGs were able to use. But in one of last update, we received another one that actually opens, let's call it like gates of hell, because thanks to that, we can use SVGs as much as we like, and we can use them on many different ways. And of course, that's why we are here today, because we would like to create some SVG chart or card, or maybe everything we can actually create inside the SVGs. If I will look on this another slide, I can see that here I can have inside my SVGs the logo, which is quite typical, or the icons, or even whole cards to be able to directly show some kind of percentage with another part of a text and a subtext, or even the full chart as I mentioned previously. And of course, much more, because as I said in previous slide, in case of SVG, what you will create is just up to you and just up to your imagination. So in that case, you can really build anything, and it can be very scalable. But if we would like to create any kind of SVG, we have to select our way how we will be actually creating them. And we have two main ways. First of them is by some SVG editor, and second one by the text editor, because it's just XML file. And because of that, we can open that in mostly any text editor like Notepad, VS Code, PS Pad, whatever. And in case of SVG editor, we can also grab mostly any of them. So even the freewares like Inkscape, Vectorinator, or some paid ones like Illustrator. This would depend on your personality, which of them you would select. To be honest, I prefer text editors much more, and would be also great to describe some pluses and minuses between them for you to be able to decide. So I created very easy slide here, where you can see that inside SVG editor, okay, I have UI, so I can very easily by clicky, draggy, droppy, create mostly anything that I would like to. Okay, if I would like to create something inside SVG editor, I need to be, let's call it like a little bit graphical handy. And to be honest, I'm not. I'm not graphical handy, and I'm not capable to create things pixel perfect just by setting it on a canvas. For me, mathematical way is much more fun, so I'm going for the SVG edit, for the text editor, where I can actually prepare it from scratch. On the other hand, the SVG editor will support more creativity, because you can just wrap the rectangle, drop it onto the canvas, and it will appear. In case of a text editor, I would need to write it from scratch. So yeah, I will have more creativity, but in that case, it would be much more harder to reuse this created SVG. And also, if I would like to make it dynamic, so text inside will change based on some inputs from Power BI, or even the lines will be recalculated inside the line chart, or by bar sizes, I need to find out how the whole SVG was created inside SVG editor, and then I will somehow need to recalculate my values to drop them into it, which can be pretty hard, because sometimes it's very difficult to identify the used positioning system. And also, SVG editors quite often use some elements that are not that easy when you're starting with SVGs. Like, if you would be in a text editor, it's just up to you what you can use. And in that case, you would start thinking about your solution much more simpler. So you will, or you should, be dividing what you're creating into small parts, like, okay, here will be the bar chart, or just one bar, and that bar will be created like, oh yeah, it will be a rectangle. And if I would like to create some 100% bar chart, then I will need two rectangles. One that will be from 0 to 100%, and second one that will just be rising based on this percentage. And in that case, it will be much more easier for you to actually create that, then create it inside the SVG editor, and then recalculate everything inside of that to make it the same way. But of course, this strongly depends on the type of SVG editor that you're actually using. I've tried to create one very simple line chart in SVG editor that I have on a Mac. And this very simple line chart that you're currently able to see was created just by paths. And paths, or path element that you can see inside of that, is incredibly powerful. Oh, someone is talking? No? Okay.
Yeah, sorry, James, I had to mute you.
It's okay. So, path is incredibly powerful because it can help you to create literally anything. I would say it's the most powerful element in whole SVG system. But when you're starting with SVGs, it will be very hard to read it because it uses lots of acronyms inside, like M, L. M is for mover toe, L for liner toe. Then you have the verticals, you have here the horizontals, curvitos, and another acronyms where you need to know what to set up. And if I would receive SVG like this from some kind of SVG editor, no way, I will not be using that because it would create me quite a headache to be able to really understand what's happening inside of that. Create a chart, that line inside the line chart can be done by polygon or a polyline. And normal vertical L and horizontal line can be created just by line, by nothing else. And still it will be much more readable for anyone who will open the SVG. I know, path is great, and it can do mostly anything. But it's not every time about using something that generic. It's about selecting proper element that you would be able to modify. So that's why I'm not using the SVG editors. And of course, every SVG editor is using different types of their own attributes inside the SVG, and some of them would use the line, some of them would use a path, some of them would use polyline. And then when you're switching between them, it would be very hard to read your SVG. So no, sorry, I'm the one who went directly for text editor. And to be able to start with text editor, you need to find out something about the elements and attributes, the building blocks of all SVGs. And we will start with very basic elements. Actually, here you have the list of absolute basic elements. By the way, if you would like to have this presentation after, you will be able to have it because I will be showing the QR code where you will be able to download it after. So you don't need to screen it right now. This is just the basic elements. There are much more of them. The one that is most crucial in other is SVG element, because it's a basic container that is telling your browser or your visual server what actually you or that you're starting declaring the SVG. You can combining these SVGs together to have more of them inside of that and create much more coordinate systems inside if it's necessary. But when you're starting, start with one SVG, create what you need, and then after some time, try to combine more of them and you will find out how it works. Of course, then there's something like groups, because we are quite familiar with grouping in a PowerPoint or another tool that we can actually grab two elements and put them to the group to be able to move with them at once, or set for this group all text to a bold or italic or underscore. For absolute same purpose is G here. G here is just a container that is for you to grabbing other elements together. And then you can see here much more, the text, the T-span, rect, for rectangle, circle, ellipse, line, and much more. And they are all pretty easy to use, actually. And we will be using some of them quite soon. Then when we know that there are some basic elements, we also should know something about the attributes. We have here, once again, some basic attributes that are widely shared between the elements. The fill, which is a basic attribute for defining the color. By the fill, you can define color for all the elements that you were able to see before. But be aware of one thing. If you will use fill for a line where it will appear, down or up, it would depend on how you've created the full container. For something like line, you have here the stroke color or color itself. Every single element has own list of attributes that can be used. And where to find all of them? That's actually a very good question. All of them or more details about the SVGs you can find on any of these free websites. I'm actually using mostly developer.mozilla.org because they have absolutely wonderful documentation over all SVG world, and sometimes we-free school, because you can even try it if you would like to. But mostly when I'm searching for something, I would go directly to developer.mozilla.org. If you will try to code, it will directly send you to SVG part of all of them. So don't be aware to use them. But now, the Power BI cooperation with SVGs. I've already said that there were already two visuals that were capable to work with SVGs even before the new one. I think you're pretty capable to guess which one is the new one. But before I would directly get to them, I still need to say something, that we need actually to split our SVGs into the static and dynamic. And now I'm talking about the perspective from Power BI layer, because from perspective of Power BI, we have a static SVGs that we can directly put somewhere by uploading them into the PBX file, or by having them inside our model. So because we can grab them into the model and then use also, but in that case they would be quite static. Then we have their dynamic ones. Dynamic means that the whole SVG will be created based on our code that we will provide Power BI to generate, and that code will cooperate with our data that we already have inside the model. So based on that, we can actually show how much sales we've got, and based on that, it can show our lines or bars or anything else. And for that, we need quite lots of text. So we can also divide them just by the dynamic ones, use a text, and static ones are in a model or provided directly from our PC. And today we are here not to talk about the static ones, but only about the dynamic ones. Because the dynamic ones are the ones that actually has the full potential of SVGs to show anything that we would like to. Okay, here you can finally see that three visuals that I've promised you that are able to generate our dynamic SVGs. Because yeah, if we would be talking about the static ones, it would be much more. Even blank button can inside the icon show the SVGs. So yeah, but for the dynamic SVGs, we can use a table and a matrix to generate our SVG on a row level. So how the rows are inside a table or inside the matrix, so our SVGs can be created there. If we would not have any rows inside the matrix and we would put our SVG measures into the columns, then yes, based on every single column, we will have another SVG. It's just up to us. But thanks to new card that appeared inside of Power BI, we can create much more creative things inside of Power BI. First, let me please show you how something created inside a table or matrix can look like. It's the easiest way actually how to use the SVGs, because we can actually generate some dashed score line or progress bars with some targets, and pretty easily it will be just a few lines of a code to be able to generate something like this. In case of a card, we can create absolutely everything. So in that case, you can create full KPI cards, even the spider charts, even cards with the bars, where the highest one will be green, lowest one will be red, etc. I'm very sorry. Someone is in the office and still talking. But I'm back. And of course, we can even create some more creative 100% bar charts. And that's just a peak of the iceberg, because when we know that we can do anything, our imagination can start growing and create another and another stuff. And I think it's very good time to finally try something to create on our own. If someone has some question right now, please ask me. I'm not able to see you, so I will for a moment stack and you can ask about anything right now. So no questions, okay. I cannot render all void SVG. Yes, there are some limitations in case of SVGs that you're not capable to show. It's not documented, unfortunately. But what I know that you're not capable to render is any hover or on action behavior. So if I would like to highlight some part of the chart right here in the right part of a slide, it will not respond to that, unfortunately. Also, Power BI has quite an issue to work actually with a transform options. It can work with a transform, but unfortunately only if it's defined with the highest node of SVG element. If it will be anywhere inside of that, it will not render that at all. So yes, sometimes it's about testing and trying to create something and then finding out that it's not working. But besides these two limitations, I wasn't able to find any other that currently wasn't working. If you know some other limitation, please drop it into the chat or just unmute. I really would like to know about them. Someone else have a question? If not, okay. So I will close presentation for a moment. And I would like to say that very often when I'm creating some SVG inside the Power BI, I'm next to that using the Visual Studio Code. Why? Because it has very great extension for SVGs where you can be creating your SVG and directly be able to see what's happening inside of that. And this can even work quite well with Deck Studio because I can run my measure that should create my SVG code. I will just copy it from that, drop it here, and I will be able to see where's the issue. If I've missed some closing inside the brackets or I've misspelled something, this is a very easy way how to debug that. But let's go for Power BI already. I will start working with a card, with a new one. And inside this new card, I would like to start from scratch. And I have for that little template. I'm calling it like SVG start, where I have some declaration that needs to be put directly before my SVG, then my SVG header that is also required to have. This is not necessary, the width and height directly here, but I'm using that because only thanks to width and height defined in the earliest node of SVG element, you can still be using the auto function inside the card, inside its image support. Without width and height, you can of course use the view box to be able to define your coordinates, but in that case, the image, the auto image size will not be working, which is quite strange because inside a table or matrices, it works. Only in new visual card, it's not working. Hopefully it will be fixed one day. And after the header, I have here the SVG end, and I can just drop them here into the result where I will be combining all my parts as I would like to. I also have here just prepared some text that should appear in the middle, but a little bit to right because the basic behavior of a text is that it's up on my basic point and it's going to the right. So if I would really like to have it in the middle, I would need to change my text anchor and dominant baseline to the middle and the middle. And then I have here my rectangle. If I would grab just this SVG start inside the visual card, I will also drop here the blank into the data. It's nothing else than just a blank measure. I can go for cards for image and drop the image URL based on conditional formatting. So SVG start here. And as you can see, it generated my rectangle, which was defined as a background. The rectangle is very easy to define. You're starting with element called rect. Then with the initial position, it can be from horizontal or vertical side, it's just up to you. And then you can define its width or height. Actually, it doesn't matter of any position of any attribute inside the element. This is just something what I like, that I'm starting with the X, then I with a horizontal and vertical, and then using the width and height, and then after filments. But everything is set up for 400. And if I will look directly inside the setup of properties, you can see that my rectangle is not 400 size. So it's even capable to downsize or make it much more wider than it was before. But it will stick to that 400. That width and height, it will set up the maximum for all dimensions that I need. But what if I would like to create the card where I will be able to use all space that is inside the card? In that case, I can go for 400 to 400, and definitely my square inside of that will squeeze a bit. So I need to change most of settings of a card to be actually able to use that. So I will start with a padding for a moment. I will set it to 0. Then I will go for visual, not for shape, but for callout. I will turn off the values, turn off the labels, and still you can see that I have here some space all around my rectangle. It's because of padding inside the cards, where I can also change to a custom, and then finally I'm a little bit closer. If I would like to be able to use everything, I need to set up also in the image the padding. And now finally, I'm capable to use every single part of my card. So I would be very glad if there would be some option directly inside the card to be able just to switch to SVG support, and then it will remove all this unnecessary space and unwanted parts of that. But these days it's not here, so only just by defining the templates directly for a new card to predefine how it will look like, it's doable. But so we have now the rectangle. I have here very simple model also. I have here some sales, which is a fact table, the employees, the product, and a date key. And first, I would like to create some very easy card that will show me the top one sold product and its ratio over all other products. So let's say that if the most selling product would be the motherboard C, I would like to see that it has been sold about 38% from the full scope of all products. So let's start with just a few parts where we will create this progress bar. Then we will create some text up on that, and maybe just by a few editing inside of that, we will be able to create some very interesting card like we would be able to see here. Because this is something slightly similar, but not with a progress bar, but with a column cards where column bars when we are able to see even the target line and if some month went over or not. So I will go for my SVG start and I will duplicate it before I will be starting. So let's create another measure. I will call it like a backup. And now I can finally start with my SVG start. We already have here some rectangle, but the fill that we have here, the very lime green, is not what we need. So I will just simply remove that, and it will use the base fill, which is black. So sorry, I will go once again for that, but now I will define that I would like to use white. Okay, that's just a basic background. We will even be removing that after to be able to use any background of that visual directly from Power BI. But we will be defining our percentage. So let's start to create the background bar of our progression bar, because the background one, this is the easiest one. It should be just from the beginning to the end, and it should be maybe a little bit gray, just a bit. So background bar. Oh, yeah. It will be the rectangle, and now we should define where it will begins. Even here, we can create something that would be very handy actually, and that's a padding. If we would like to use full potential of what we have inside our card and not be restricted by the paddings that was provided directly from the visual, we can define it on our own, just simply by saying that, okay, from the X, we will start from a 5%. When we are defining any position, we can use mostly any type of specification that we would like to. It can be even just a 5, then it would be 5 points. Or we can use 5% to dynamically squeeze from side to side. So I will go for 5%, and I will do that somewhere on the bottom. So it will be, let's say, from 80%. The width will be, we have 5 from one side, we need 5 from another side, so it will be just a 90%. And then we need also the height of that, which will be just a 10%. Oh no, you know what? Let's drop here 15. And we will need some very nice looking gray. We can even use the gray that is used by Power BI, which is F3, F2, F1. And I will directly drop it here before the background. And we've received an error because we didn't close the rectangle. Now we have our blank space even without our bar. Why is that happening? It's because when SVG is rendered, the elements are rendered in chronological order. So if I've add background bar before background itself, background will be over our background bar. So in that case, I need to put it behind. And now you can see that my bar appeared. That's actually why I let background here before, because I would like to show you that it really depends on how you are setting everything and even the positioning directly inside the code. So now let's remove the background because now it's not necessary. Definitely not at all. And we can see that our bar is very wide, like very. What if we would change the height from 400 just to 200? You can see that it's squeezed just a bit, and also it moved up. This is because in this moment, we are setting the vibe for still for 400, height to 200, but our visual is still 400 to 400. Okay, yeah, I know. Quite often it happens that height or width is changed directly by the visual itself by -1. It's actually never +1, it's just a -1. It's just a little bit broken. So I will go for height, which will be 200. And now you can see how 5% down looks like. It's very strange, like very strange. Using the percentage to generate the SVG can quite often happen like this, that your setup precision will not be what you're expecting. That's why I actually prefer not using the percentage, but using direct points inside our created space. So let's start not from a 5 right now, but from a 15. We know that we should be ending on a 400. So here it will be 370. Here it will be from, we will need a 15 on the end. Let's do it like, okay, so we will use 30 plus 15, it's 45, so 55, it will be our basic space. And now we can see that inside our space, it's set up absolutely properly. And if I would be squeezing the size, if I would be still on the same ratio, so 200 versus 400 locked aspect ratio, every time, like every single time, the padding will be completely the same as it should be. So that's definitely something that I would strongly recommend. Use the points, don't use the percentage. So now we have our background bar. And thanks to that, we can create our progression. So progression bar, and it will be actually the same. I will just grab that. But now I will not say that width should be 370, but it can be even just 300. I will drop that behind. And I can even change my fill, but I don't remember any green color. I'm sorry for that. So I will call for my little helper, which is called just a color picker. And its size is a little bit strange, but okay. Let me grab like this green. And I will drop it here. And as you can see, right now we have very simple progression bar. It's extremely easy to create something like this. And now we just need recalculate our space to be able to show it here. But to be able to show it in a dynamic way. Now we have it in a static one. So let's go to create it in case of some our data that we have inside of that. And we will start with setup. I will go for another variable where I will grab. Oh, someone unmuted. Would someone like to say something? No? Okay. Don't hesitate to stop me and ask about anything, please, anytime. Okay, so I will go for creating my initial table where I will go for summarize, where I will grab all my products by a product name. I will add to them the sold quantity to be able to find out how many of them were sold. I have here one measure for that, which is actually a pretty easy measure. It's actually just a sum. Yeah, here. Oh, okay. This one is not just a sum of quantity. Sorry, so I will just fix that. Is also to calculate very quick margin here. So I will go for sales, for quantity, and yeah. Now it will be a little bit different. So yeah, now we have a total quantity of all of them. And thanks to that, we can grab the complete sold amount, so total sold, which will be just summix of what we have created before. And we can also grab any of our products that we would like to. Let me grab for this moment the top one. So the top product. I will go for a top one from TBL. Order will be by sold and it will be descending. And I will grab from that my amount of sold product, where I will grab, so it's just a top, it's a salt, okay, and we have it. Right now, we know that we would be able, that we've, like for example, sold for 30,000 units. And from the first one, we've sold like, let's say, 7,832. It's just for example, because actually I don't remember the exact numbers of sold here. It's just my demo file. And now we can finally recalculate our ratio, where we will just very quickly divide our amount of sold products by total sold. So ratio of solds. This is actually that we very need right now, because we know that our ending is 370 long. And if we would multiply this final width with our ratio of sold, we will receive actually the width that should be used inside our progression bar. So result width, which will be ratio by our size, which is 370. And thanks to that, I can just combine it together by result width, drop it here, and as you can see, it's just a very small amount. To be able to say that it's correct, I can go for normal 100% bar, drop it here, the product names into the legend, and now I would still need to find out which of them is which one. But yeah, their sizes are quite similar. So at least for a moment, I will go back again for the margin system here, where it will change a lot, and we will be able to see that this one is actually the product name motherboard C. But still would be great to really have it inside our card without necessity to looking for this information anywhere else. So let's add it into our SVG. We have progression bars where we've used the rectangles. We can also add our texts. So it will be texts. And here we will call for element that is called text, but we will close it not directly in defining of element, but by separate element ending. This can be done for any element, if I remember that correctly. And especially here, if you put something between these two elements, it will be actually brilliant. So let's write on position X. It will be 25. Oh, it's a X, so it will be 15. Sorry. Epsilon or U will be 25. And we will use here what we already have, but we just didn't ask for that. And we will set our amount of sold product to be able to see how much we've sold. And it will be sold of. And here we will define what product we've sold in this amount. And to be able to get that, I will just simply go for the product name that is covered inside of that. In this moment, I will not be reusing that, so I can even drop it directly here. But to be able to maintain it later, it's still better to define it as a separate variable. So top product name, and it can be even by minix. Top product, the product name, and let's drop it here. Okay. And yeah, I forgot about the most crucial part, edit it into our result. Where it will be, it's called texts. Yeah, and as you can see, we've directly received our values into our car. I know it's not well formatted, it even not respects our fonts that we're using inside the Power BI right now, but that's something with which we can do something. Inside the text, we can define font family, where I can call for SVG UI, and finally, we have completely same text family or font family as in mostly any other chart that we are using. We can even predefine our formats or format of our values that we would like. So, okay, I will use the format here, and inside the format, I will use some thousand, millions, and billion, trillions delimiters, 0 on the end. And we have the 1000 separator. Still, it's quite far away from our bars. So let's drop it just up on that. In that case, we can go just for our 155s, and I will show you what will happen. If I'll drop it directly on that, we'll be able to see that start of our line will actually be on that 155. If you would like to change the baseline of it, the baseline, you need to be able to define that. So dominant baseline line, and if I've changed it to the hanging, you can see that our baseline is now going down. If I would drop here the middle, our text would be directly inside the middle of them. So thanks just a few attributes, you can completely change what you would like. If I will let it to be as an auto, it will go right up. So we have auto, middle, and the hanging. But still, because it's just a start of a line, still we will be able by quite a lot of characters go under that, which is not quite nice. So let's brief all the parts of this visual that we're creating. So let's go for 130. It is much more space, but if you would like to have the same padding, it will be just 140. Yep. And we can set up mostly anything for that, even the fill. So I will go for a fill again, and I will drop here our gray to have everything inside the gray. But what if I would like to be able to have the motherboard inside the same green color as we use for a bars? It's completely easy because we can override it by adding the T-span, where we will define also the fill. It will be our green one before we are defining our product name, and we just need to close it before ending our text. And in that case, we're able to see that full text is sharing everything that is actually defined inside our text, but by a T-spans hidden inside the text, we can override what was already set up. We can even set our font weight to bold to make everything into the bold. And yeah, we can right now be changing the parts of our text. To some part will be bold, some of them will not, and we can even change the size of the text itself. I know the initial gray is not very great to see, so I will change it to CC, CC, CC. It will be much more gray. Yep. And now it's much more readable. If you would like to be able to maintain your colors after that, please predefine them. Complete the same as we are predefining any calculations, we can go for color declaration parts and say, okay, here will be our green, which will be just this color. So I will just open it into the green. It will be same here. Then we have some darker gray, which would be the C version. And then we have here the light gray, which is this one. It's quite a good practice, good best practice to predefine everything at the beginning to be able just to change it after, and it will propagate into every single part. So the light gray, the darker gray, and nothing should actually change. Yes, it will look still completely similar. We can even do the same here inside the width and height, because inside the setup, I can set the width of SVG, where will be 400, or normally 400. So our height will be just divided by 2, just to make it sure that every time the ratio will be same. And we can even drop here our heading size, which will be our 15. And in that case, we can replace it mostly anywhere, and it can be dynamically recalculated after, just as we would like to have it. If you will be using SVGs and you will be generating them more and more often, you would also need to use the concatenate X quite often. Why is that so? Because right now we've created just progression bar, and in that case we've needed just 2 rectangles, just few quick calculations, and a text, nothing else. But what if we would like to be creating something? Something like this that I've showed you before. In that case, we would like to have it as dynamic as possible. So if I would go for the months, I would like to be able just to select 5 of them and then really show 5. And for that, you really need to go into the concatenate and start compiling it together. I think that I also have here here's the KPI. Because in something like that, you can have just one concatenate X with your already prepared table like we had. Just few variables that will be defined for every row over the concatenate X, and then you will be just pointing it directly into your code. This will be very helpful for you because you will not need to define every aspect of that. And you can just reuse some parts. Also, I would like to give you some tips that were pretty handy for me when I was starting. Let's say that, okay, for this purpose, we have here just small amount of our aspects. So if you know what, I will go here for column chart and I will show it here, because quite often when you need to define, and even if you will be combining that inside the concatenate X, you would like to predefine all things that parts have similar, like the opacity should be full and outline should be none. When you're defining any element, as one of your attributes can be style, which is actually CSS style. So if you know how to use CSS inside the HTML, you can use them even here. And you don't need to define it every single time in every aspect. You can just go to the beginning. You can create your style list where you will define your style element and ending of a style. And then if I would say that this rectangle should be without outline, I can use the class like in normal CSS. So it will be class known outline. And I will just take it from here because I don't want to have it here. I will drop it here. And I also need a name. So none of our outline. Because it's used as a class, I need starting with a dot. So none outline. And I will be using just the outline, just the none. And now, oh yeah, I didn't define it at the end. So just behind the header, I list my CSS code that I've defined in a style on the beginning will apply to all my bars that has inside of that its class name. So you can even predefine all your styles at the beginning and then just be referencing it by using the class names, which can be very helpful because then you can have just one variable that is defining all all behavior that you would like to provide to your elements, and you don't need to be reusing it in or redefining it in every single sub-element. So, any questions right now?
No, not. I don't see any questions right now, but at least I'm not not sleeping or anything. So there are, and I think some others are liking this too. And yeah, okay, like a more general question from Michael, if it's suitable for self-service. Okay, we can debate on this.
Okay. In case of a self-service, I would.
I don't know who is this sound.
Oh yeah, finally it's over all the voice. Let's say it like that. Every single measure that is just for purpose of visualization shouldn't be seenable for any user in case of self-service. You should make it hidden or even a private by a tabular editor if you can, because every single visual related measure is every time built for some specific purpose. And in that case, no, it's not suitable for self-service. It's more focused on creating something a little bit more fancy, or even for departmental BI, or even for some enterprise, but it strongly depends. If you would be debating about the speed of the SVG, I can tell you that it's blazingly fast. I was pretty shocked how fast it is, but even creating something like spider chart is inside few milliseconds. And that's quite huge. If I will try to compare SVG speed with some custom visuals, I would every time would go for SVGs, because in that case I can modify any element that I would like to, and still it's incredibly fast, and it's just based on my measure that I'm using. So in 99% it can still be optimized and it can be faster. Exporting, because I'm now reacting to one question. Actually, exporting that into the PDF is a very good question, and let's test that, because I've never needed to test it before, and we will see. And I'm very happy that someone asked for that. So Give me a moment. It will generate everything. And now I can finally say that, yes, it will even generate our SVGs inside the PDF. Because as you can see, everything has appeared. And even the chart is actually animated. Luckily, it's not printed as a GIF. That would be very strange, because that's something that I didn't said that before. Inside SVGs, you can use classical CSS keyframes to create something like GIFs. And the same you can do here inside the Power BI. I know, it's just a weird animation. It was just a test that if it's even working here, and I was pretty sure that it is. But yeah, you can use mostly anything else. I was even capable to create a waffle chart here. And if you would like to, you can combine more SVGs into this one. So the gray boxes can look like completely something else. Let me show you how it works, because it would be a very great demo, I would say. I will go for my Visual Studio, where I have one SVG for a discount. Yeah, I would like to format it by the SVG, and I will directly grab it from here. As it, oh no, it's a wrong one. Oh damn. Okay, so I would also need one XML space, but I think it's a space and it's a preserve. I'm not now 100% sure if it's this one, but let's test it. Before I will put it inside a Power BI, I need to replace the double quotes for a single quote. I will go for Power BI. I will go for a waffle chart, and I will use another tag that I didn't show you before, which is defs. Okay, I need the defs. What's inside the defs will actually not be shown, but it can be used by another element, which is called use. So I will go here. I will call it as an ID, and ID will be the disk. And let me try use here the code where I would go for different rent, where will be the switch. Oh, if, oh, I can even grab it from here. And if value will be larger than it should be, I will grab this part. So it will be light gray. Oh, too many double quotes. And on the other hand, it should be use. I will directly close that with complete same calling, but with caller called ref to our ID, which will be the disk. And now I really hope that, yep, now I've made them disappear. And that's exactly why you need the Text Studio to be able to grab the result SVG that you have here. So I will go for that waffle chart, run, just grab my code, drop it into another one, switch it to the SVG. And yes, it's disappearing from that. Oh, yeah, I didn't define the width and height. So, and even after that, it's not showing. So it means that I have some, oh, okay. Now I can see that. Sorry, I will define it very quickly and hopefully it will appear. So we need to add under the header our depths, and inside the cubes, I will add the width. And yes, now you can see that we've reused SVG that we've already defined somewhere else, but because we've added to that SVG our XML space, which is called preserve, so it will to set up space by other element, like inside the use, squeeze the predefined SVG to set up width and height. And thanks to that, we can combine SVGs as much as we would like to. And I think that's all for today. Thank you so much for attending. If you would have any questions, I still will be here and I will be answering your questions.
Yeah, I would have a question too. So, do you ever had like the architect to hide all the code via like in calculation groups and then have like just a switch that you create a card with a spark line, you create a card with comparison to previous year to like maybe I imagine something like this. It's quite handy for the end users. But
Actually, the thing that you're saying can be used. It can be used, but not directly inside the cards,
okay.
which is pretty pity, because in this moment, if I would like to aim my calculation group, I still need to aim it on some other measure. But I can't actually provide my basic measure into the image URL because it needs to be the image URL, so just the text. So in that case, I would need to create the item inside calculation group for every specific visual. That's not what I would like to. You can do this for inside a matrix or inside a table because we can grab this buffer chart.
Okay, yeah.
And drop it here. And in that case, yeah, it would be doable and it would work absolutely great because then I don't need to create measure for everything. Inside the card, no.
Okay, I understand, but the card is still evolving. I think they will add it.
Hopefully.
So. Yeah, okay, and then of course the comment of Andrea that the measures become quite long. Yes, it's.
Yeah, the measures are getting much longer, but that's not something that would actually matters. You can even create one measure for setting the stylus, then another for another parts, and then your Power BI would definitely thank you. Why?
Yeah,
because count of measures matters inside your model, and you should have as low measures as possible, like as low number of measures as possible.
Yes, and of course, I think the key is also the variables and just to easy adjust your templates of certain graphics, and then it should be quite reusable, even if it's of course it's still a lot of code. Yeah, you have a great article there, also with code examples.
If you would like to use the same template that I was showing it here, you can go for data meerkat/templates, and you can directly grab it from here. I'm also putting here some another types of the templates, and I will be publishing here even more of them later. So, okay, someone asked if I'm
Yeah.
using ChatGPT to help with DEX SVG. No, sorry, I'm not using ChatGPT for this. Only thing that where I'm using ChatGPT is sometimes to generating marketing posts for nothing else.
And of course, the question, so when would you recommend DNAP and when would you recommend SVGs?
DNAP is insanely powerful visual, insanely. And Ben, who is here with us, know that I like DNAP a lot. And still, I need to say, lots of companies are not supporting any custom visuals. And in that case, you're not using DNAP. So,
I think, if I may also make a comment on this, if that's okay, sorry. I think, yes, companies don't use custom visuals, but one of the reasons that people don't like to use DNAP is because it's a skill set that you need, which I think is also true of SVGs, to be honest. I do think that my favorite thing about this question is that it exists because it's an amazing choice that we have, right? People who have that DNAP skill set can use DNAP. People who write SVGs, you can basically choose to, and to an extent also Charticulator was in the conversation, less so now, of course. So I think it's a great to have that choice, and depending on who you build reports for, some companies have certain restrictions and the other ones. So the question of which one's better could go on forever and could result in thousands of annoying LinkedIn posts. So the same as Power BI versus Tableau LinkedIn posts, you know.
Yeah, still there will be one similar answer. It depends, and
Exactly.
it depends on so many factors.
Or when you would use the HTML visuals of BI Samurai and others.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's still, everyone knows something, and they're going for what they know. Previously, I was doing some website development, and I was quite often working with CSS and SVGs.
Okay, so it's more handy for you than to learn DNAP. Even if I would say DNAP is still a little bit less hardcore programming than SVGs, because for me, I am also programming background, but yeah, it's not very fair to say, but I think a JSON is still like better readable for humans than XML structure.
Yeah,
I can definitely agree on that, because to be honest, I like much more JSON than XML. But I find some challenges where DNAP was much harder for me than creating the SVG, and it's likewise. It really depends on the situation. Sometimes I go for DNAP, sometimes for SVG, but it's really great to know that there are possibilities on both sides.
Yeah.
And if you're not able to use any custom visual, like 70% of my customers, I'm not able to use the DNAP at all.
It might be worth pointing out, however, that if you want to just generally expand your ability to create visualizations outside of Power BI, which I've started recently to do. I started to learn D3, for example, and SVG is a big part of that, you know. And actually, so if you want to have a skill set that you can use outside of Power BI, which I know you can with Vega Lite and stuff, but I think for that sort of thing, SVG is probably going to be the better thing to learn, because you use it on other visualizations that are used all over the. Excuse me, sorry, I'm quite sick. And that are used in more places, you know.
Yeah, and maybe if I once again will turn it all around, and I will turn it to the point of a data storytelling. In SVG is very easy to use degrading pattern here, because if I will set the text like here to 100%, then the t-span to 50%, it will be 50% from my original 100. If I will change from 70, from 100 to 70, still my 50 would recalculate from 70 to 50 very easily. And it gives me lots of opportunities to play with lots of different data storytelling principles very easily, without necessarily defining exact points like inside the DNF.
Yeah, true. I just thought of one more thing. I'm not engaging in a battle. I'm just thinking as I go here. Perhaps a nice thing about DNF is that you don't have to write many measures, because the measures that you already have, you're using an inside DNF, and you can then also make a choice. You know, if I want to do some filtering or anything, I can write that inside DNF using, of course, Vega Lite, or if I want, I could write another measure. But you actually don't need many extra measures when you use Vega Lite. So there are so many pros and cons to both. It's really, it's a really interesting conversation, interesting question. But at the end of the day, it's really going to come down to what we said at first, which it totally depends on who you're building for, or what you want it to do.
On the other hand, I could also say that it's much more like, from a DevOps perspective, it's better to have as much as possible in the measures, because you can archive them, you can share the code, and not inside certain visuals.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I 100% agree. I try to do as little work inside Denim as possible. And actually, if I need to do some filtering or whatever, I'll definitely do it in a measure. Because why wouldn't I? Because that skill set, you know, the user has. They have the DAX skill set right there, you know? So whilst there are fewer and they're not as long, sorry, you want to say something? Go for it.
I would just like to add another point to both points that you just said. I will just combine it together, and it will be that we know that count of measures matters, and more measures inside the model makes the model decreasing its speed, just because they are just inside the model. But what if we would be able to define report level measures, like if we would have our Fabric warehouse where will be our base measures and measures that we need, and then on a report that will be inside the subsequent data set, we will create a measure that will be usable inside of this. We will not be generating a measure that will be slowing down the main model, and it will be usable. Then it will be even versable, thanks to PBEP file.
Yeah.
And then it's a win-win situation. Unfortunately, it's not working. If you will try to do that, you can create a report measure, measure for report level, but it will only support two data categories, latitude and longitude, not the image URL. If they would ever add that, then it would be very, very nice.
This question, did anyone try to do performance tests similar DNF versus SVG? I've got to say, I've never tried, to be honest, but for me, DNF is very performant, as is SVG, and any difference is going to be so minuscule that we're not talking about like 1, 2, 3 seconds here. It's like it's all custom visuals are, of course, slower than standard visuals. That's always going to be fact, but very, very minimal. So I say this even when it's not a comparison to whatever, like SVG or Charticulator. When deciding to use DNF, it's never something that I take into account regarding performance, because if the performance is slow, it's a problem with the measure, to be honest, that you've used, or the model. It's not because of the visualization.
Yeah. To this point, from the SVG perspective, yeah, you're very dependent on the speed of a measure, but also on an engine that is rendering that. If you will use lots of elements to create one simple SVG, it will be much more longer to generate. If you will use a simple element or you will be reusing the one that you've predefined inside the dev, it will be faster. So same as in a DNAP, you can make lots of optimization. Same can be done on an SVG. And I'm not sure that anyone already runs some speed performance test between them. But it will be very fun to do that.
We can do it and post it somewhere.
Yeah. Okay. I think yeah. Also, the recommendation like to create a measure library for visual patterns. I think it's quite in the same direction I asked with calculation groups. Yeah, of course, you can also build a huge switch.
No way. I'm just showing one QR code. It's to my GitHub repository where you will be able to find this presentation after. You will be. It's not there right now, so I will be publishing it after.
Yes, it works.
Very cool. Nice one, man.
You're welcome. I just don't want to forget about it.
Okay, then thanks everyone for attending here. Like a nice, very, very interesting deep dive. Lots of fun. How, yeah, very unusual things you can create with Power BI. It's very powerful, and even the announcement of SVGs was quite low level in winter or start of spring. So it was there. It was like a little bit of hype, but not as much as other announcements, I think. And yeah, besides
it needed some time for everyone to understand its capability.
Yeah,
and now it can spread a bit. Hopefully.
Yeah, and it's interesting what you said. It's there to stay. So I was kind of thinking, oh, okay, maybe it's just a temporary workaround, and then the core visuals can do it anyway better. So is it actually worth to deal with this? But after you told me, okay, you can also use this with new cards, and then you really just have the design. Maybe you can even keep the text and keep everything else and only make like the sparkline as a picture. It's much easier pattern than that what you have drawn, but it's quite still cool stuff, and yeah, a little bit in between the very complex and the very powerful.
So thank you so much for having me. I'm pretty happy that I was able to be there.
And yeah, you're always welcome.
One day another session.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, mate.
Yeah. Thank you, Stefan. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Next time. Yeah.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.